Hi, everyone. We are here with Julie Sandys Bianchi. We are going to talk about the Shakespeare Oxford Fellowship's annual video contest, this year focusing on the first folio. So, Julie, thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to hearing you get into it for us and tell us how we can all become winners. So, thanks again.
Okay. Well, this year's contest is a deviation from our past contest because the contest originated as a Who Wrote Shakespeare contest in order to, because we are advocates of the Earl of Oxford and the Oxford Society, but there are other candidates that people consider. But this year, because we are approaching the anniversary of the first folio, we thought it would be a good idea to maybe concentrate more on the content of the first folio, because frankly, the wonderful videos that we get from our contestants are really useful to us when we go out and speak to other people about what we do. And I think also it helps generate interest in people who hadn't even thought about the authorship question before. And so this year, not just because of the first folio, but using the first folio, it made sense to look into all the various aspects that it takes to create a great big book like that. My background is theater, and I wanted to be an actress, but I ended up being a designer and a technical director and a carpenter. I come from 300 years of carpenters, no wonder I know how to use tools. And so the idea to me of how the book is made, I mean, how paper was made in the time period and the printing process. And I thought this is a type of accessible information for people who aren't really quite ready to buy into the Earl of Oxford as being the author, but might introduce them to what we do, and it's also interesting to us. So that's what prompted that. And I've made my own paper before. It's actually
is that right?
Yeah, I did that for a while. So it's kind of a mess and it's fun.
My wife and I were on the way to an arts camp down in, I think it was North Carolina, and COVID came in the way, closing everything down. So I think we're hopeful to get back there. And the class that I had enrolled in was paper making. So I just love it. So you have designed this program this year in 3 levels: foreground, background, and underground.
Right.
You've just talked a little bit about the background, which is
that's actually the foreground to me.
That's the foreground.
That's the first thing you see. It's the what is this? It's a big book. It has the cover. I mean, the words are obviously can be mixed up, but in this case, we're using foreground to represent all the technical things, the printing, the engraving. I mean, you had to, the first folio wasn't cut in brass. That's, it was actually cut in copper. So that's so learning about the copper plate engraving techniques that were used, and the just the type of inks, and the fact that the paper that was made for the first folio was designed by Sir John Spielman, to make the newest, most brightest playing cards. So it's the River Dart had very clean water, and so it made really white paper. So there's funny little details that you can find when you start looking into just the mechanics. So that's the foreground. The background, I see it as the people in the background, the people who don't take the glory necessarily, people who are influenced it. For instance, we have Thomas Watson, who was a poet that William Covell said Shakespeare was his heir, because a lot of the things that Covell did, traveled to Italy, wrote plays with these reflections that are in Shakespeare. And so people like that are kind of interesting to know about. And then we have Edward de Vere's daughter, who was said to be responsible for having a collection of the plays after the Earl's death. And just the people who came up with the money that for the earls to whom the plays were dedicated, how much work Mary Sidney had in it. People like to give her credit, and there's some evidence that she did. She had a room in her own house that was Ben Jonson room, and Ben Jonson was instrumental in making the first folio. So just finding the interplay with these people, and just because we made a streamer that shows these pictures, doesn't mean that those are the only people. That just to try to give you a sample of these types of people, the people in the background who somehow contributed to the making of the first folio. And then the next part is the underground, and that's kind of for Oxfordians can be a touchy subject because we're always reminded of the Baconians who got in trouble for delving too deep into hidden meanings in the work. On the other hand, there are hidden meanings in the work, and I think about how we have played in the past, the past decades, Sudoku. So if you saw one of those grids 400 years from now, what would you make of it? What were these people doing at this? This square thing, or now with Wordle. But there's something about games that are played that are distinct to an era that somehow, people stop doing it and people become forgetful about it. So we had a period of time where people were interested in making funny coded messages. It was kind of a game. It was something, and for you to use your education, your knowledge of Greek or Latin to say, oh, there's a double meaning in this. And that was what was happening at the time. And so to deny that because of the Baconians, I think is kind of silly for us, because there are a lot of interesting encryptions within Shakespeare. And there are things like the mastheads, the details of the mastheads. Why those symbols? What symbols are in the mastheads of the printing around the edge?
Mm-hmm.
All those little decorations. What are those for, and why were those chosen? And sometimes this is benign, that was what the printer had his family owned that design for 150 years, and that's what they're repeating. But to find these things out, I think is an interesting investigation for the question, the authorship question.
So you've mentioned all three of the sort of
Mm-hmm.
levels that you're encouraging people
Yes.
to think about.
Yes.
Is there anything that connects to poor old William Shakespeare, where we might say he clearly wrote the plays because of X, Y, and Z?
Well, if you're talking about William Shakespeare of Stratford-upon-Avon?
Yes.
No. I did do, now I come to authorship primarily in my adulthood as a genealogist. One reason I use my maiden name is my Sandys maiden name is, it was fairly prominent in the Elizabethan times. And I went through it this morning and just kind of wrote down how many people I'm weirdly related to as cousins. So I can tell you I'm related to de Vere. I wrote it down. He's my fifth cousin, 7 times removed.
Wow.
Anne Boleyn was my second cousin, 15 times removed. Henry VIII, fourth cousin, 12 times removed.
Oh, holy Toledo, I didn't
Mildred
know.
Cook is Burleigh's wife, fourth cousin. Thomas Wyatt, I just like Thomas Wyatt. He was my 13th great grandfather, and he was, killed. And then Mary of Scotland, who was also killed. And I'm also related to William Shakespeare. He was my sixth cousin, 12 times removed. And by knowing this, I look at this cohort of people who circle around the authorship. And I have over 86,000 people in a tree I've amassed over 40 years. You can see, any genealogist could, from studying these people, that Shakespeare's an outlier. His inroad is through his mother's, I'm going to blank on it, now I'm blanking on their family. This is what I do. It's just the bizarrest thing. I do family trees, and I'm at the age now, I'm almost 70, and my mind goes with names. So I can't tell you the name right now. I know it's about an hour. But anyway, his son Noble, he has some noble ancestry, and that's where the tie-in is. Because frankly, anyone born in England is said to be, descended from Edward I, and Edward Longshanks, and his body is lying on the banks of the Solway Firth on the land that was owned by my Sandys ancestors.
Wow.
So it's like,
I must say this is a reaffirmation to me of the joys of journalism, to be able to talk to someone and be really surprised, do your homework ahead of time and be really surprised during the interview. This is just great. So you also had mentioned playing cards, that the paper for the, was it the pages or the covers of
the vellum, the white vellum that was used for the portrait in the book, in the first folio, is the same type of paper, beautiful, white, 100% linen rag, very expensive paper, folio size. And this was the same type of paper that John Spielman got a patent to make, and said it was going to be used for playing cards, because playing cards were printed on a folio size sheet of paper. And the playing cards were not manufactured in England until about, I think it's like 1617, around that time. They didn't. They weren't permitted. They had to be imported from Europe by the Queen allowed that, and so she gave the monopoly to Sir Thomas Bedingfield, who was an important man in our studies, because when Oxford got in trouble and ran away to the lowlands, who came and rescued him but Thomas Bedingfield. And then when he came back from his trip to Rome, he came back and lived there with Bedingfield. And then we have also Ralph Bose, who was also given that. He was also given the monopoly on that. And the two of them worked together. And so they had the monopoly of importing playing cards. And then somewhere along the line, because King James loved to play cards, he was just an avid card player. He would sit, let his courtiers hold his cards for him and make his moves. So at that point, card play, they decided to start allowing manufacture in the U.S., but in England, but it wasn't allowed until well after the plays had been written. But the thing that kills me about this is, so I figured out that there's card playing themes in the first folio, and it was really totally an accident, So I was looking at the language of it. It was the word brass. Why is it something cut in brass? And it's like, it's not cut in brass, it's cut in copper. So I thought, it's spelled B-R-A-S-S-E. And I did take high school French. And I said, brass, brasse. So I went to the French dictionary that my French teacher gave me when I graduated. And guess what? Brasse also means to shuffle playing cards. And then I went, oh! So I went down to our library that has the whole Oxford English dictionary, and I had my French dictionary, and I went through and translated all the words in the encomium, and it's like there are at least 2 card playing terms in every line of that encomium. So, wow. But this is the type of thing. So you do that, you go through that whole episode, and you tell people about, oh, look at this, oh, that's so exciting, and a couple of years pass because you're busy like being on the board of the SOF, things like that kind of distract you, and suddenly it occurs to you, wait a minute. In that Condell letter, Hemming's Condell letter, and the whole thing about buy, you got to buy this thing. Wait a minute. Buy is a card playing term. It took me so long to figure that out. So I'm looking at it. There's also, I think I pulled it off today. It has, to the great variety of readers. Of course, we also say people read cards. And I've always often wondered if the whole term with the players rather than actors,
right?
Players. So we'd had rather you weighed. You weigh your hand. Hands are weighed in terms of their value. That's a term that is used in card playing. All books, people book their cards, or cards are your hand is called a book of cards. Then it says buy, and when you enter a game, you buy in, or you buy when you are delivered a card, or you pull a card. That's called buying. Then it says. Or so you rise to the just rates. Well, you raise and lower, raise, I'll raise you, I'll see you and raise you, those terms, those are old terms. And then there's the word jack. And then the word court, and the face cards were called court cards. And then near the bottom it says both to draw and hold you. Come on, we've all heard those terms before. And that's just it. That's in the letter, So But my other discovery just recently, which really just made me say, you are so right about this, Julie. Because you always wonder if you're just dreaming these things up. I attest, I say that the plays in the first folio are in the order of the tarot deck, because the tarot deck was used for card playing. It wasn't used for, fortune telling particularly. It was really used for all sorts of really creative gameplay. And so like the Shakespeare of Italy, Torquato Tasso, he would pull 2 cards from the deck and use those 2 character types, archetypes, to put characters in a play. And that's what I believe that Shakespeare did, because it's so, you can go through each play and find the prevalent characters. It's kind of obvious. And some of them are really funny. Like one of them is the Emperor card. And the Emperor has his hands on a throne that have ram's heads on it. And one of the lines by, I think it's Dromio the clown, says, what am I, a ram tender? I mean, it's kind of a weird line to throw in the middle of the play, know? So you can see someone saying, oh, should I pull this card too? And I haven't thought of anything. Oh, I'll do this. And you make up a funny line. But one that got me was, I said, this play, Titus Andronicus, lines up with the Tower card. And the Tower card and the Devil card in the tarot deck are the 2 cards that are most feared. They're the most tragic cards, and they're the most often missing from antique card decks because people say, oh, throw them away. They don't want to keep them. So I found, I said, I don't know if I'm right about Tower for Titus Andronicus. And I thought, but I never really looked up Andronicus as a surname. So I looked it up on, just on the internet, Andronicus. There's an Andronicus Tower. It was designed by an architect named something Andronicus. It's in the Plaka in Athens, and it's still standing. And it was very famous for it was used for astronomy. It's in the Tower of the Winds, it's called, and there's pictures of it still standing, 8-sided, kind of like like a little miniature version of the globe.
That's fascinating. All right, let's get.
Anyway.
Let's get. Frankly, I can listen to you all day.
Well, that's pretty much my spiel.
Let's get back to the contest. We're encouraging people to produce videos in one of 3, or I guess at least one of 3 areas: foreground, background,
underground, and it's all about the creating of the first folio.
And they can win prizes.
We're this year, rather than a first, second, and third prize, we're doing the same amount of money for each of those categories. So 1,000 for foreground, 1,000 for background, and 1,000 for underground.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And the contest is open now.
Yes.
And it ends on
the 22nd of July.
Okay.
And there's a precise time. There's a deadline. Contests have very strict rules to manage them.
And one can enter whether you're a member of the Shakespeare Oxford Fellowship or not. Is that correct? Okay.
Right.
And
but the winners get to be members for free.
There you are. And you can enter if you are resident in the United States or a host of other countries.
Yes, France and Germany. And the other countries that aren't included, it's really because they have such strict rules about contests. Some countries are just so rigid. It's very hard for a nonprofit like us to, muster the manpower and the legal power to manage it.
All right. And finally, much of this information, but without the charm and enthusiasm, is available on the Shakespeare Oxford Fellowship website.
You will find the details about what we're looking for in the contest and the rules and the forms you need to sign up to send in your submission. Yeah, so 3 minutes, 3 videos, we'll say 3 minutes. 3 minute limit.
You actually said something in response to a question the other day as to why the time limit was set at 3 minutes. Could you just briefly go over that?
Well, there are a couple of reasons for it. The one thing is that if you're going to send an email via Dropbox, the Dropbox services have a limitation as to how much you can send without you having to pay any money. So we're trying to make this a contest that's available to students, to anyone. We don't want to limit people by their income. Then there's the reality of the time it takes for everyone, us volunteers, to preview the videos, because we select the best ones for public voting. And the longer that looks on our webpage, you realize people are going to say, I can't keep watching this. So it's kind of a human limit of patience.
Right. And finally, the winners will be, or the finalists will be put up for viewing on the homepage of the website.
Right, of the SOF website.
Right.
During the voting, which will be in August, and you can only vote once, but you can certainly rally your friends to vote for you. There's no rules against that. Okay. So it's a fun opportunity that way.
Yeah, it really is. Really is. Yeah. Okay. So
also, I know what I wanted to say, Bob, is that to make it clear here that we aren't looking for the entire treatise on any of the topics. What we're looking for is a nice bite. We're looking for a taste of the topic, because the beauty of and the joy of being an Oxfordian, I think all of us find, is in that the question and the kind of the curiosity that it sparks in us that makes us want to go back and learn more. Yeah. And through our learning more about the Elizabethan times and the cohort of people who were creating plays and making plays, we learn about, well, the impossibility of the author being the guy from Stratford, but we can also see the whole interplay of all the other people involved. And I think that's what makes having a shorter topic helpful, is that it inspires you to go look for more.
Sounds great. I'm going to go get busy and try and develop a pseudonym for myself so I can enter. I encourage everyone. Here. Well, you'll know what it is. So I encourage everyone to check out the homepage of ShakespeareOxfordFellowship.org. Check the rules. Enter. I suppose I can enter more than once. Is that true? Or
you can enter a different video more than once.
Different video.
Some people have. We've had a few people every year who enter more than one, but most people enter one great video. But
all right, that sounds good. Thanks a lot for talking with me.
Well, thank you.
It's my pleasure, and we'll look forward to all the videos coming in. So take care. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.